Hello everybody, welcome to Daily News Simplified, an answer to what, why and how of newspaper reading. Today we shall be analyzing the Hindu newspaper dated 7th of December 2018 of the New Delhi edition. The topics to be discussed today has been presented on the screen. The timestamping for the same has been provided in the description box below. Let us begin our today's discussion. This particular article appears on page number 8. The title of the article is Social Media Polarizing the Society? This particular article shall be important from the perspective of GS Paper 3, Security, under the subsection Role of Media and Social Networking Sites in Internal Security Challenges. Further, this particular article also becomes important from the perspective of essay paper, wherein in UPSC Mains 2017, a essay topic has already been asked on the role of social media. Due to advancements in the field of information and communication technology, there has been rapid growth in the social media websites such as Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, etc. Now, this becomes extremely important for India because India has now become the second most populated country in terms of access to internet, wherein around 200 million Indians have social media accounts. However, this rapid growth of social media has proved to be very controversial, because of which there is an ongoing debate whether social media is a boon or bane, which means to say that the social media has inherent positives as well as negatives. For example, social media enables the people to express their views and opinions, wherein people, apart from consuming information, also become creators of information. And over a period of time, this has widened the scope of fundamental rights in India as well. Further, the governments across the world are proactively engaging with the citizens in order to take their views or opinions on important policy formulations. Similarly, the citizens are also engaging with the government through the use of social media networks such as Twitter. And more importantly, social media has become an important tool for mass mobilization. One can see the example of this mass mobilization in Arab Spring, the Me Too campaign, or the use of social media during the disaster managements. Hence, one can clearly see here that social media has proved to be very inclusive and participative tool of governance. However, in spite of these positives, the social media has turned controversial because in recent times, the rapid growth in the use of social media has posed internal security challenges. For example, in recent days, social media platforms such as WhatsApp have become prone to the circulation of fake news, which is blindly believed by the people. And such fake news promote hatredness or animosity among different communities in India. So one can clearly see here that in a multi-religious country like India, the use of social media has dented our secular fabric. And this rapid growth of social media has also affected our news channels, which have so far not remained immune from the circulation of fake news. Thus, the growth of social media is increasingly posing the internal security challenges to India. Further, concerns have been raised with respect to the data privacy of the users. This has been recently highlighted in the controversy related to the Cambridge Analytica. Hence, it is in this particular regard, this particular article here opens up a debate on whether the social media is responsible for the polarizing of society. And as you can see here, there are three different viewpoints which have been expressed by the authors. The first viewpoint is that the social media has polarized the society. The second viewpoint is that the social media has not polarized the society, rather it has empowered the people. And the third viewpoint is much more a balanced viewpoint expressed by the author. So as part of this video analysis, we will be covering these three aspects of the article, starting with how the social media has emerged as a polarizing agent in India. Now coming to the role of social media as a polarizing agent. Now the question which can be raised here is, what should be the role of social media in a democratic country like India? The social media must promote the three Ds, that is discussion, debate and dissent. And social media has to play a proactive role in reducing the inherent bias in the people and make the people more receptive to others' viewpoints, beliefs, and opinions. So, in a multi religious and multi faith country such as India, The social media should promote harmony and brotherhood among the people. And more importantly, it should also promote tolerance to the others' viewpoints. So instead of reducing the inherent biasness in the people, the usage of social media leads to hardening of one's beliefs, views, and opinions. And this is because various social media websites such as Facebook, Twitter, etc. use various algorithms in order to improve their users. For example, Twitter keeps suggesting to us the list of people whom to follow, and most of the time it is observed that the list of suggested people would be those people who share a similar viewpoint as ours. So, as we keep following such people, our value system becomes much more hardened and we become less receptive to others' viewpoints and opinions. Similarly, websites such as Facebook keep suggesting posts which would be consistent with our viewpoints and opinions. For example, if a person has inherent biasness against any community, such a person would come across with a post which would show the community in a poor light, which would in turn harden his beliefs and opinions against that particular community. Similarly, by using social media, it has become extremely easier for the users to filter the news according to their views and opinions. For example, if a person dislikes a political personality, he would obviously look for information that would portray the political personality in a negative light. So, even in this case, it would lead to the hardening of one's beliefs and opinions. So, these suggestions and posts get repeated every now and then, just like the echo of a sound. So, because of the repeated suggestions and posts, this leads to hardening of our belief, views, and opinions. So, this particular process of social media, which can lead to hardening of one's beliefs, is also referred to as the echo chamber phenomena. It is referred to as echo chamber because we are being bombarded with certain suggestions and posts which are congruent with our viewpoints. Hence, we become less receptive to the viewpoints of others. Apart from that, the social media can also influence an individual's behavior. We can understand this by looking at a psychological experiment known as the Ash conformity experiment. Now, this particular experiment proved that the individuals might give wrong answers just to conform with the majority. Now, this may be done by the individuals because some individuals may believe that the majority viewpoint is right and their own viewpoint is wrong. And some individuals may give wrong answers just to be accepted. Now, these results of the psychological experiment can be extended to even social media, wherein people may start believing in fake news. And more importantly, people may not raise their voice in spite of the fact that it is wrong. Now, all these things clearly highlight that the social media has emerged as one of a polarizing agent in India. Now, coming to the second part of the debate, that is the role of social media as an enabler. The social media is considered to be inclusive, participative, and disruptive in a positive way, which means that the social media provides equal opportunities for all the citizens in India, irrespective of caste, creed, religion, sex, etc. Hence, it provides for an inclusive framework for all the people to express their viewpoints and opinions. Secondly, it is also participative because it promotes good governance in India because it enables the government to engage with its citizens. At the same time, it enables the citizens to put forward their concerns before the government. And overall, it leads to strengthening of the democracy in India. Further, the social media has also been used for mass mobilization campaigns. For example, during the Arab Spring, Twitter was widely used by the people in order to usher in democracy in some of the West Asian countries such as Tunisia. Further, social media has been at the forefront in raising gender related issues such as the Me Too campaign, and it is also used during the disasters. Now, all these things clearly highlight that the social media can actually play an enabling role in a country like India. Further, the famous philosopher Aristotle has stated that there are three different modes of persuasion, these being ethos, pathos, and logos. Ethos here means the credibility of a person who is trying to convince others, which means that people would believe only those people who are credible. The second, pathos, means emotional appeal. People would get convinced only when there is an emotional appeal in the message. And finally, the persuasion of the people also depends upon the logic behind the message. which means that people would get convinced only if there is a logic or rationality involved in the appeal. This clearly shows that the ability to convince others is basically dependent upon these three factors, and social media can at most play a role of a tool. So, social media is just a tool of persuasion, and ultimately, the persuasion depends upon the three factors. Hence, because of this, since social media is just a tool, it would be wrong to put the entire blame on social media. So, finally, it can be said that ultimately the people should be able to use the social media in a responsible manner, wherein the people have to become receptive to others' viewpoints, beliefs, and opinions. And more importantly, they should check the authenticity of the news before believing in it, and they should not be involved in the circulation of fake news. And lastly, the people should educate others for the use of social media in a responsible manner. So these are some of the aspects which one should know with respect to the role of social media as an enabler. So based upon the discussion which we had, a main question for your practice would be, the social media has emerged as a double-edged sword. Discuss. Similarly, a essay question for your practice would be, social media an enabler or polarizer. So having analyzed all the aspects related to this particular article, let us now move to the next article. Now the next article appears on page number 1. The title of the article is Cabinet Clears Policy to Double the Agri-Exports. This particular article shall be important from the perspective of GS Paper 3, Economy, under the subsection Indian Economy and Various Issues. This particular article has appeared in the newspaper because the Union Cabinet has recently approved the Agricultural Export Policy. Hence, as part of this video analysis, we shall basically focus on three aspects. So we'll understand various aspects of this policy, such as the need for the cabinet to approve this policy, the objectives of the policy, and the strategies adopted by the government to boost the agricultural exports from India. Now coming to the need for the Agricultural Export Policy 2018. India is considered to be one of the largest producer of agricultural commodities. However, India's share in the world trade is extremely lower at 2.2%, which shows that there is immense potential to boost the export of agricultural commodities from India. Secondly, there has been overall decline in the export of agricultural commodities from India in the last 5 years. And more importantly, most of the agricultural products which are exported by India are low value and semi-processed products, which clearly shows that India can give a further thrust to the agricultural exports by undertaking processing of the agricultural commodities. And lastly, the government has come out with a vision of doubling the farmers' income by 2022. Hence, in this regard, this particular agricultural export policy would enable the government to realize this particular vision. Now coming to the objectives of the policy, this particular policy aims to double the agri-exports from India from present 30 billion to 60 billion by the end of 2022. Further, the export basket in India is basically dominated by the marine products, meat and rice, which together account for 52%, wherein among these three products, the highest value is contributed by the marine products. Hence, in this particular regard, this particular policy aims to diversify the export basket of India. Further, this particular policy aims to promote novel, indigenous, organic products from India. Now coming to the strategies adopted by this particular policy, presently the government of India has placed certain restrictions on the export of the processed agriculture commodities. Now these restrictions could be in the form of the minimum export duty. Hence, in this regard, this particular policy aims to do away with all the restrictions which are presently imposed for the export of the processed agricultural commodities. The APMCs have emerged as one of the major hindrances for the development of agriculture marketing in India. For example, in some of the states, the farmers are not allowed to sell their agricultural produce directly to the exporters. Hence, in this regard, this particular policy aims to bring about the APMC reforms. Further, it aims to develop the infrastructure and logistics such as the cold chain infrastructure as well as to provide for adequate facilities at the ports. And in order to boost the export of agricultural commodities, this particular policy focuses on the value addition as well as the processed foods. So the idea here is to promote the food processing industries, which would lead to Bake in India on the lines of the Make in India. So, in order to enable Bake in India, this particular policy aims to attract the private sector investment in the food processing. So, these are some of the aspects which one should know with respect to the Agricultural Export Policy 2018. Based upon the discussion which we had so far, these two questions would be a prelims question for the practice. Please pause this video and try to find answers to these two questions. We will be discussing the answers after 5 seconds. The first question here is, which among the following has the highest share in the agricultural exports from India? And as we have discussed, the correct answer to this question is A, that is marine products. Now the question number 2 here is, consider the following statements related to the Agricultural Export Policy 2018. The first statement is, it aims to double the value of agricultural exports by the end of 2022. Now this particular statement is correct. The second statement reads as, it aims to remove the restrictions on the export of the processed agricultural commodities. And as we have discussed, even this particular statement is also correct. Hence the correct answer to this particular question is C, that is both 1 and 2. With this, let us now move to the next article. The next article appears on page number 9. The title of the article is Food for Thought. This particular article basically discusses about the Global Nutrition Report 2018. Hence, this particular article becomes important from the perspective of GS Paper 2, Governance, under the subsection Issues related to the development and management of health, as well as issues related to poverty and hunger. Before analyzing this particular article, let us first look into the background. In the year 2013, more than 100 stakeholders involving United Nations, governments, civil society organizations came together in an initiative known as the Nutrition for Growth Initiative. As part of this initiative, the stakeholders gave a commitment to reduce the malnutrition across the world. It is in this particular regard, the Global Nutrition Report 2018 tracks the progress on the commitment given by these stakeholders. And accordingly, it provides us with certain insights related to the current state of global nutrition, including that of India. So as part of this video analysis, we shall basically focus on 3 aspects. Firstly, we'll understand the highlights of the global report. Secondly, we'll understand the status of malnutrition in India based upon this particular report. And finally, we'll look into certain suggestions given by this report to reduce the malnutrition. The Global Nutrition Report 2018 tracks the status of nutrition across the world in terms of 8 indicators. Now, this particular image here is a screenshot which has been taken from the Global Nutrition Report 2018. And accordingly, you can look at these 8 indicators. These 8 indicators are adult high blood pressure, child stunting, adult obesity, childhood wasting, adult overweight, childhood overweight, anemia, and salt intake. So based upon these 8 indicators, the Global Nutrition Report tracks the status of nutrition across the world. It is to be noted here that a child is said to be stunted if he has lesser height according to his age. Similarly, a child is said to be wasted if he has a lower weight according to his height. So with respect to the status of these indicators, this particular report clearly highlights that the 8 key nutrition indicators are off the course at the global level, and the progress so far is simply not good enough. Further, this particular report highlights that the stunting is declining at the global level. However, it is increasing in Africa. And it states that the current burden of malnutrition is unacceptably high, wherein 22.2% of children are stunted, 7.5% of children are wasted. And as you can see clearly in this particular map, it is mainly the countries of Africa and Asia which have been affected by the higher level of malnutrition, which clearly indicates a direct relationship between the economic growth and the level of nutrition. Now coming to India's profile of the Global Nutrition Report 2018, this report highlights that India has the highest number of stunted and wasted children in the world, wherein you can see clearly here, against a global average of 22% of the stunted children, India has around 38% of its children who are stunted. Similarly, the wasting in India is comparatively higher as compared to the world's average. And more importantly, the higher level of malnutrition is observed in the districts in the northern and central India as shown in this particular image. However, this particular report points out that there has been slow improvement with respect to the malnutrition profile in India, and this slow improvement has been captured by the concept of Z score used by the Global Nutrition Report. Now, this concept of Z score is a comparative measure of the physical development of children, wherein if a child has a Z score of 0, it would mean that the child is as tall as an average child. On the other hand, if the Z score is negative, it would mean that the child is stunted. So as you can clearly see here, with respect to stunting, there has been improvement for all the communities in India, such as the OBCs, SCs, STs, etc. Similarly, with respect to wasting, there has been improvement in the Z score of the scheduled tribes. It is to be noted that this particular concept of Z score becomes important from the exam perspective. And finally, if you look at India's progress against the 8 global nutrition targets, we can clearly see here that India has improved only with respect to the under 5 stunting parameter, whereas with all other 7 parameters, there has either been no progress or the conditions of these parameters have worsened. So these are some of the aspects which one must know with respect to India's profile on the Global Nutrition Report. So in order to address the growing malnutrition across the world, this particular report has suggested 5 critical steps to be adopted by the governments across the world. The first suggestion is break down silos and develop comprehensive programs. What it means is that instead of implementing multiple schemes and programs that can lead to unnecessary overlapping and problem of coordination, there is a need to have a single comprehensive scheme to address the malnutrition. Such a scheme would bring about synergization of efforts among all the stakeholders. Secondly, there is a need to prioritize and invest in the data needed and the capacity to use such data. The third suggestion is to scale up and diversify the financing for the nutrition. The fourth suggestion is to focus on healthy diets to improve the nutrition across the world. And finally, it has suggested that the target should be improved and accordingly the stakeholders have to commit to these targets. Now these are some of the suggestions which have been given in this particular report. Based upon our discussion, this would be a prelims question for the practice. You can pause this video and try to solve the answer to this particular question. We will be discussing the answer after 5 seconds. The question here is, which among the following indicators are tracked under the Global Nutrition Report? And as we have discussed, all of these 4 indicators are tracked under the report. Hence, the correct answer to this question is D. With this, let us now move to the next article. Now coming to the next article, this particular article appears on page number 7. The title of the article is Air Pollution, Cause of 1 in 8 Deaths. This article shall be important from the perspective of GS Paper 3, Environment, under the subsection Environmental Pollution and Degradation. Now, this particular article has appeared in the newspaper because recently a report has been published by the government wherein this particular report analyzes the adverse impact of the air pollution on the health. In this aspect, let us understand the key findings of this report one by one. This particular report highlights that India, with an 18% of world population, has a disproportionately high percentage of the global premature deaths, wherein India accounts for around 26% of the deaths which have been caused due to the air pollution across the world. Further, air pollution has emerged as one of the leading causes of the deaths in India, wherein 1 in 8 deaths in India have been caused due to air pollution. Further, it states that if India had controlled the air pollution, then the average life expectancy of the Indian would have been 1.7 years higher. Around 77% of the Indians have been exposed to the higher levels of particulate matter 2.5 as recommended by the National Ambient Air Quality Standards. Now, this particular concept of National Ambient Air Quality Standards becomes important from the prelims perspective, wherein one would be required to understand as to which all gases are being tracked under these air quality standards. And this particular air quality standards covers totally 12 pollutants. These pollutants are PM10, PM2.5, nitrogen dioxide, sulfur dioxide, carbon monoxide, ozone, ammonia, lead, nickel, arsenic, benzene and benzopyrene. So these are some of the aspects which one must know with respect to this particular article. Based upon the discussion which we had so far, this would be a prelims question for the practice. Please pause this video and try to find answer to this question. We will be discussing the answer after 5 seconds. The question here is, which among the following are part of the National Ambient Air Quality Standards? Now, as we have discussed, 1, 2 and 3 are part of these air quality standards. However, carbon dioxide is not part of these standards. Hence, accordingly, the answer to this question is C. With this, let us now move to the next article. Now, the next article appears on page number 8 as a lead article. The title of the article is Still on the Last Chance Saloon. This article shall be important from the perspective of GS Paper 3, Environment, under the subsection Environmental Conservation. Before analyzing this particular article, let us first look into its background. During the Paris climate change talks, the global community arrived at a historic deal in order to combat the global warming and to reduce the emission of the greenhouse gases. So, as part of this climate deal and on the basis of common but differentiated responsibilities, each of the countries decided to come out with their intended nationally determined contribution, which means to say as to what steps a country would take in order to reduce the emission of greenhouse gases. For example, India has come out with its own INDC targets, wherein India has decided that it would reduce its emission intensity of the GDP by 33 to 35% by 2030 from the 2005 levels. Apart from that, India has also decided to create an additional carbon sink of 2.5 to 3 billion tons through the forest and tree cover. It is behind this particular backdrop the Katowice climate change talks are being held presently, wherein the main focus of these climate change talks is to implement a rule book to take forward the Paris deal. So this particular rule book is basically going to lay down the rules and regulations on the implementation of the Paris climate change deal. Hence, in this regard, let us understand some basic details related to the rule book. Now, the rule book basically aims to lay down a framework for the implementation of the Paris climate change deal, wherein it is mainly focusing on 4 aspects. These aspects being establishing a uniform methodologies for the measurement of the emission targets undertaken by the countries across the world. Secondly, as stated, under the Paris climate change deal, the countries have come out with their intended nationally determined contributions. Hence, in this regard, this particular rule book aims to lay down a framework for the reporting on the progress of the INDCs. Further, in order to ensure that the countries are able to abide by their INDCs, it provides for a peer review of the targets. However, the most contentious aspect of the rule book is with respect to the transfer of finances from the developed countries to the developing countries, wherein the rule book aims to lay down a transparent framework for the transfer of finances. Now, this becomes extremely important because, as part of the Paris climate change deal, the developed countries had given a commitment that they would be providing finances to the developing countries in order to combat the effects of climate change. As part of the climate change talks, the developed countries had given a commitment that they would be contributing $100 billion every year for climate financing. However, this particular article has highlighted that in the year 2016, the developed countries have contributed only $38 billion. Now, this clearly shows that the developed countries have been reluctant to transfer the finances to the developing countries. Further, as you know, some of the developed countries provide development aid to the poor and developing countries. Now, what some countries have done is that they have accounted the development aid as climate finance in order to fulfill their obligations under the Paris climate change deal. In this regard, the developing countries have been demanding that the developed countries should provide for new and additional finance, and the development aid should not be clubbed with the climate change finance. So, the developing countries have been asking for the funds from the developed countries to be exclusively used only for the climate change. Hence, in this regard, this particular article basically highlights that the ongoing COP24 negotiations held in Katowice has to take urgent steps to cut down the greenhouse gas emissions. Further, there has to be a progress on the transfer of finance and technology by the developed countries. And more importantly, there is need to have consensus between the developed and developing countries on the implementation of the rule book. The COP24 negotiations are going to end on December 14th. So let's wait and watch as to what would be the outcome of these climate change talks. So having discussed all the aspects related to this particular article, let us move to the next article. Now the next article appears as an editorial on page number 8. The title of the article is Shielding Witnesses. This article shall be important from the perspective of GS Paper 2 Governance under the subsection Government Policies and Interventions. Now this particular article basically talks about the Witness Protection Scheme, and the various aspects of the Witness Protection Scheme have been covered in our DNS dated 20th of November 2018. Now in this video, we have covered various aspects such as what is witness protection, the scope of witness protection, why do we need witness protection, the role of state in the witness protection, and the aims and objectives of the Draft Witness Protection Scheme 2018. So please go through this particular video to know further details related to the Witness Protection Scheme 2018. Now, this particular editorial here basically highlights that the Witness Protection Scheme in India would face logistical and financial challenges. It is to be noted that countries such as US provide for advanced form of witness protection, wherein if a person agrees to testify before a court of law, such a person is given a new identity or a name by the government. Apart from that, a person may also be relocated to a completely new place so as to avoid any kind of undue harassment and intimidation. Hence, in this regard, even in India, we need to have such advanced form of witness protection. However, this editorial highlights that the Indian government would face logistical challenges in giving a new identity to the witness, relocating the witness to a new place, or provide new documents to the witness to establish his new identity. So based on this, we can come to a conclusion that the witness protection scheme in India is not as strong as compared to the other countries, and hence these logistical challenges related to the advanced forms of witness protection have to be resolved at the earliest. Now these are some of the aspects which one must know with respect to this particular article. Apart from that, you can go to this particular DNS dated 20th of November 2018 to know all the aspects related to the Witness Protection Scheme. Now the next article appears on page number 12. The title of the article is OPEC agrees to cut oil production. This particular article shall be important from the perspective of GS Paper 2 International Relations under the subsection Important International Institutions. As you know, the international crude oil prices has reduced by more than 30% since October 2018. It is in this particular backdrop the OPEC countries have decided to cut down on the oil production. Now all the aspects related to OPEC have been covered in our DNS dated 4th of December 2018 by Naved sir. So you can go to this particular video to know more details related to OPEC. With this, we have come to end of today's discussion. Now let us look at the question for the day.